So let's go. I was listening to this by CRZYSND, and let's go back. Let's listen to. So what I like the most about this track is that, okay, you got the ambience that we all know with the booms and the strings, etc. But those arpeggios are very, very interesting. So on top of something that is familiar and that we all know that works, you added something that is your own kind of thing. Maybe you're a guy who plays piano. Like this tells me you have a peculiar taste about these things, and that's the stuff that I like to hear in music. Now, the thing I would do to improve this, as I said before, this sounds a bit muddy. So what I would do normally to fix the mud, and this doesn't sound mastered yet, so maybe you can fix that with the master. What I do to fix some muddiness sometimes is to EQ, or if I'm lazy, and that's not a good thing to do all times, but if I'm lazy, I will open OTT on the master or on the specific instruments I want to remove mud from and to make more sharp. OTT is this free plugin from Xfer. I open it, I set the depth to like 15 to 20%, depends on how aggressive I want it to be. And I will set the gain on the mid-range to, 95, on the high range to 105 or 110. So you kind of shape the sound. And when you activate it, it becomes way more clear. So the impact is it's crazy. You can hear it especially in that sort of shallow, which sounds amazing. Well, without OTT, it all sounds kind of muffled. And but still, I'm not very great at mixing and mastering. So other people might give you better advice, but for, quick patch is like OTT is very good for that kind of stuff. Okay, this satisfies me. It sounds like I loved that transition over there that you did with the percussion. That was very interesting, and it was very well done. What I don't like is you did the mistake that many beginners do, which is remove what came before completely. So before you had a full, you had strings, you had ambience, you had the orchestra and everything. Well, here you want to go to another place. You want it to sound a bit more aggressive, so you added the drums. And it makes a huge difference. The problem is that you completely removed everything else. You removed the chords that we heard, you removed the melodies we heard, and apart from the perks, I'm not hearing anything much. There's the shouts, which is a very good touch, but it would have been awesome to have some big brass, and then also maybe some arpeggios that goes along with the percussion. Or you could have kept maybe some of the strings. You could have kept maybe the piano, but something that still makes the orchestra sound like it's there, but it doesn't disappear completely. It doesn't need to be something that takes away from the percussion. I like that the percussion in this part is the main element, and it's the focus goes completely to percussion. But the disappearance of the orchestra is not nice, So especially if you decide to add the orchestra back later. Maybe add something more minimal, like I said, brass marcatos that alternate with some arpeggios. I love that you did the percussion field here. Yeah, this is awesome. You're doing great, man. Probably the percussion is a bit too loud. Probably that's one of the issues I'm noticing now. there's the same mistake as before with the perks. So add something in between those breaks. So some strings and something like that, you know, so that when the perks go away, you still have the string. Something like that, you know. That would be awesome. Also, one thing I love is you have this sort of stutter quality all over the track. There's a sound, I don't know if it's percussion, if it's pads, but like that's awesome. It creates a very interesting degree of energy and rhythm that doesn't die. So I feel like the track is like it's very enticing to listen to. I love that. It's quite a solid track in my opinion. Maybe the perks are slightly too loud, and maybe here I would have expected like for you to go even higher. You know, you can extend this a couple bars. So ba 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 ba, and then you do a break, and then you do this sort of thing. You know, so just go slightly beyond that. You know, like they say in Boku no Hero Academia, plus ultra. go beyond. Okay, this is a track from Daniel Mckeon, Rise. This is from Patreon, so I'm listening to it before everything else. Let's go. What's up with you guys and your arpeggios? These sound freaking awesome. I love the synthetic quality of this track. Okay, I gotta say that was some damn good plus ultra. Like, yeah, this goes beyond. Like, I love this passage here. And also, like, the arpeggios all over the track, man. Like, I got nothing to say to you except, like, send this to the music label, honestly. If you haven't done that yet, like, you're already there. Like, obviously, I think if you send this to a music label, they're gonna have you refine it, add a few things. So, like, for example, one thing I thought is in the beginning... Where is it? You know, here you could have added some more trailer hits. Now, I don't know. I shouldn't do that right now because I don't even know the BPM of the track. I'm going to lose some time. But, you know, add something like... And when you do the double strike, you can do it with the hit. Something like that, you know? Just to give more backbone compared to... You know, and I know this is just the intro, so maybe you don't want to go ballistic on us, and you did go ballistic on us after. But even on the intro, you want to have a bit of that. Not too many hits, but just a few to give accent to the important parts of your track in terms of rhythm and stuff, because those are the things that can be synced to a video. Honestly though, like the track is just mind blowing. This sound like that's the thing there. I cannot emulate it, but you know what I'm talking about. Maybe that gets a bit annoying after a while. Maybe it's a bit too loud. I would probably make it a bit less evident in the mix, but it can be also good. I don't know. Personally, I'm not a huge fan. In the beginning, I felt it was too loud and it took away the attention from the rest, but as the track goes on, it becomes okay. Yeah, here is another example where you can use some hits to make the perk sound more interesting. I love these melodies, man. This is like trader stuff that sounds good and thematic and stuff. Even here, you could have added some hits, like, because I cannot distinguish what are the very important parts of your rhythm. It just sounds very loud, but I don't feel like, okay, this is the accent, this is, like stuff like that. So maybe focus on that. Focus on like defining your percussive rhythms more by adding hits on specific parts that could be synced to a video thanks to the rhythm you're using for the hits. Okay, so this track, for now, it sounds like it's been composed by someone who knows music. Like, some things I'm hearing, passages and stuff, like the piano that was there, like, all this informs me that you know what you're doing. I think, though, that you need to learn how to do that in style. So some parts sounds very MIDI. They don't sound very realistic. Despite the melodies being cool and everything, they don't sound like you wrote them in a way to convince the listener into believing that what he's hearing is actually real players. You haven't done that. So there's a few tutorials like that on my channel, like how to write choir, how to write woodwinds, how to write brass, how to write strings, whatever. There's many different techniques you can learn to make those things sound more realistic. Another thing that you might want to look into that I feel you're ignoring is using some sounds to help the listener into understanding the structure of your track. For example, here, you could have used, I don't know, something like a reverse cymbal just to ease the listener into the transition, because what you have is just silence and then the track starts again. Well, if you add some reverse cymbals, which I don't know where they are here on my folders. Just a stupid example, or something like that, but not necessarily here, but throughout your track, I feel like if you use that. Let's see if we can find a spot for that. For example, here you're introducing a new melody, so if you do this here, that's kind of cool, right? And then here before the silence, you can do a longer one, maybe. Where does the silence begin? Let me check. I don't know if it's gonna work, but something like that. It really helps and makes such a track, which is like you're writing a relaxing track, and writing relaxing music that sounds interesting is very tough because you cannot use gimmicks like Brahms, Bergs, and stuff like that. So what you have to do is really make treasure of reverse cymbals and small sounds that tell the listener, hey, let's embellish this track, and now because you hear this cymbal reversing, this reverse cymbal, something new is coming, or whatever. A good composer for that is Jeremy Soule, although he's not a good person. But you can, if you want a good example of music that sounds relaxing and sounds interesting, check out his music on the Elder Scrolls series. Or even better, like the music from The Elder Scrolls Online from another composer, Brad Derrick, was freaking awesome. It's this kind of stuff. Oh, okay. That's what I'm talking about when I mean, like, you know what you're doing. These string spiccatos, like, those passages are freaking awesome. I'm not a huge fan of the French horn, though. It sounds not very brassy-like. For this passage, I think what would have worked much better for you, because of the vibes I'm getting, like ethnic vibes, maybe some woodwinds, some ethnic flutes, some medieval woodwinds, solo woodwinds, playing that same melody, but in a way that sounds way more alive. So by not only using long notes, but also short notes, alternating between the two. With those string spiccatos and those interesting perks, having such woodwinds would be awesome. If you want a good example of that, check out the Witcher 3 soundtrack for the Gwent game, like Witcher 3 Gwent game soundtrack. The tracks for that game have very interesting woodwind parts like that. Yeah, I honestly don't feel, you know, that brass that much because of what I told you. It doesn't sound to me like you're really writing for brass there. Like it sounds very linear and not that much alive. But if you did that, and also it sounds kind of big compared to everything else. If you did that for woodwinds, it would be freaking amazing. Now, when I talk about brass not sounding real, like maybe I can show you an example with one of my tracks. So when you write only using sustain, there's stuff you cannot do, like maybe this sort of stuff here. Now it doesn't sound that grand because it's without the tracking installed master. But what I'm trying to say, like, it jumps around, it does short notes and long notes, marcatos and whatever, and it sounds quite interesting because of that. That's how I like to use brass personally. That's how you notice maybe people like Hans Zimmer using brass. Now, it doesn't need to, I don't mean that every single brass part needs to be like jumpy and with staccatos and sustain and marcatos that alternate between each other. It doesn't need to be that way. But if you choose to write a track like the one you've wrote before, where the strings are all over the place and the perks, they feel like they're, you know, feels like ethnic music that makes you, you know, kind of dance and stuff. It's a shame to have a brass that only does sustains. And if you want to only do sustains on your brass, you can also try to have some breaks in between the sustained melodies and to play with the dynamics, which is something I didn't hear you do that much. So, you know, work on that. But check out the Witcher 3 Gwent soundtrack. It's a good example of what I meant. I love the vibes. Okay, I love the vibes in the beginning, but now it's getting kind of boring. Like da da bum bum bum. That's an interesting foundation for a rhythm. But if you add something on top of that, like, you know, like you can do faster subdivisions on top of the pa 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 pa. So it's good that you introduced us to this track by using that rhythm. But I would add stuff on top of it by using other violins or using even like stuff like xylophone or celesta or whatever. Maybe you did that later on. So let's check it. Okay, one thing I forgot to say before, and by the way. Sorry. One thing I forgot to say before to the other track too. During transition, you can use sounds like, I don't know, woodwind trios or brass flutter tongues, string crescendos, those weird articulations that you see on libraries. Those are useful to do stuff here when you have to increase the tension of the track for a split second to deliver even the part that comes later even better. So here I would totally see, maybe a string tremolos or maybe some woodwind tremolos instead of doing that sort of thing, and you could also do like a woodwind arpeggio, like something like that, just to make this part even more badass. Because also you can add maybe some again, cymbals, some crashes, like I always tell people to do, because the impact they have is very interesting. But you should know about it. You should know that by now. I'm a big stan of what you're doing. Like, okay, it doesn't sound like, for me, like there is much room for improvement. Here, the whole track sounds like it's a background for something that is not there. Like you forgot to add maybe something memorable on top of what you wrote. But the percussion sounds very interesting, if I have to say so myself. And also the harmonies, they sound very interesting. You just need to learn, in my opinion, how to deliver those things in a way that is much more stylish and much more, interesting. So the problem from the track from before, only doing sustains, I'm noticing that too in your music a little bit, just a little bit. Sometimes you do use staccatos and stuff like that, but it's not as strong. And here, for example, you're doing those chords on the strings, but the string ensembles doing those chords kind of sounds huge, and it's kind of drowning the percussion, or it's fighting the percussion. Because the percussion are doing something rhythmic, something snappy, and the strings are like these big, wide, sort of like, chords, and that's not good. What you could do if you wanted to help the string cut through the mix more and help the percussion instead of fighting them, you could write those chords, but for spiccato strings. So you would not, do big, chunky chords, but maybe you would do arpeggios that play notes in between those chords that you wrote. That's something I like to do for my climaxes and stuff like that. Maybe in the intro I use sustained chords and stuff, and then in the build-up I start introducing spiccatos, and then in the climax I will actually do some arpeggios or some interesting spiccato riffs based on the chord progression that I want to follow, but that are arpeggios. So they're like snappy, fast, and that kind of makes the track feel more epic. That's what I recommend. Also, I don't like that you don't have any counter melody. Like, ba, ba, ba. What if you, underneath that, you had like, ba, 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 just underneath that on a lower instrument. And also this melody, just add some staccato notes in between that melody, No, don't only use sustains. and I say this especially because you have such good percussion. This track is very rhythmic. So if you only use sustain on a very rhythmic track, that's a shame, you know. And it's gonna, for the same thing I explained here with the strings fighting the perks, this happens with your melody here as well. So what would have worked better is if you did some marcatos alternating with staccatos in your French horn and also added a counter melody underneath that to make this even more spicy, rather than doing sustained French horn that never rests and goes higher and higher to be noticed because the percussion is so loud. That, like, ideally, what you want to do in orchestral music, and this is something I struggle with myself as well, but what you want to do is always write in your arrangement, thinking about how you can make the instruments that you have cooperate between each other instead of fighting each other. Like, orchestration is mostly, mostly revolves around that, writing something that sounds good because of the way it's written. So think in terms of, what timbre of instruments you want to use. Think in terms of what articulations you should use and how you should write for each articulation based on what you want to represent. So this track wanted to be something percussive, as I heard it. Okay, so in the orchestration, you should have used way more short articulations and stuff like that, which is from Patreon. And yeah, sorry guys, I cannot show my face because my computer is lagging on the webcam. I can try activating it, but don't think it's gonna work. Okay, so Joonatan is another of the guys from Patreon. As I said, the people who support me on Patreon get to skip the queue. One thing I'm noticing is that the people who submit the tracks from Patreon tend to have higher quality tracks. I suppose, I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's like a coincidence. When you really invest money into your learning and stuff like that, and I don't mean just my Patreon. You can invest money anywhere. On my Patreon, I give away the stamps for my tracks and stuff like that. But people who invest money into learning how to make music faster get results faster, and this sounds freaking awesome in my opinion. This part already sounds quite interesting, but here I love this, this sort of thing. You can hear those accents in the spiccato strings, but also in the percussion. What I would have done maybe to make this even better is to add, well, now I'm thinking of my own style, but something like a dulcimer, like something like that. Some plucked instrument, ethnic plucked instrument that is more on the high range. So it doesn't take away from the percussion and from the strings, but adds something. That would be freaking awesome. You can also do that with some high strings if you want to. This sounds awesome. Sounds wide. Okay, here I would have expected like a big hit here and then the two big hits. Like the lack of big hit here in this part is kind of weird. This is the kind of stuff that makes me go, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. That's awesome. And maybe I'm hallucinating, but I think I'm hearing maybe guitars here. Not like lead guitars, but I'm hearing some like guitar sounds for some reason. if there's no guitars, I think this part would be awesome for a guitar because it's not too cluttered, and you could totally add a guitar solo on here if you want to. So maybe you could collab with a guitarist and stuff, shreds over this track. Said it. I said it. Now the guitar to me in this case sounds a bit less awesome than the orchestra. And I don't mean that in terms of what you wrote. Like the guitar part sounds awesome in terms of what is written. But the orchestra sounds very wide, reverberated and stuff, and the guitar sounds kind of small compared to that. So I would probably maybe add some delay or maybe add some reverb, maybe do some more wild double tracking, although I don't know double tracking on a solo if people do that or not. I'm not a guitarist, so I don't really know. But it sounds quite tiny compared to the rest. So coherence is very important in a mix, especially when it comes to instruments that are meant to be prominent in that part. But I love that you pull it off with the guitar. And one thing that is kind of boring me now is the rhythm that keeps on being the same. Okay, man. All right. So, whoa, that final part was actually freaking cool. I didn't expect that. I didn't expect it at all. What I believe could help this track is maybe more guitar, like the guitar part. Oh my god, the guitar part you had here sounded pretty okay, pretty in terms of the idea behind it was very interesting. I would have expected something like that to come back in the climax, even stronger, like, it's sort of like a shredding crazy guitarists like to do. So something like that, would have been awesome. But the thing is the percussion. I feel the percussion don't evolve as much as the rest. I'm hearing you feel like using those, those booms, those big accents, and some snares. Snares are okay for the beginning of the track, and they're okay as layers, but as the track gets more and more big, I would have expected you to use some actual big perks, like, I don't know, toms and surdos and taikos and all those things that you hear in the Hans Zimmer tracks, because this has sounds very wide. If you use some maybe hybrid perks, metallic stuff, that would sound too aggressive for this, and it would actually close the mix. But if you use something wide and big like Hans Zimmer, it would actually make this track sound even more awesome. So similar rhythms, just bigger percussions. And a library I know for that is very good for that. Well, Hans Zimmer percussion for that kind of sound, but also Los Angeles modern percussion. Both are very expensive though. So yeah, beware of that. Also, maybe using some taiko rolls here and there, or just some transitory sounds would have made this track even better. So in that final part, crazy. yeah. Here you could have done something like even just this, you know. My computer is lagging, by the way. Sorry, guys. So, or even better by using a long tackle roll. That tells us. But it's not so clear now because, you know, the track is quite mastered, the tackle roll is not. But having something like that tells you, hey, something is coming, would have made this even more epic. But I love this passage. What would have made them go even better and more, what would have made it even more intense would have been probably a modulation. And now I'm asking probably too much. But if you had a modulation in this passage after a while, maybe in the second half, it's going to be like even crazier. And modulation could be useful, like, because I felt like in this track, it's quite steady, and after a while it gets boring. But if this is made for a film, maybe the images can take over the attention of whoever is watching. So it's okay if it's repetitive. But if this is a track for listening purposes, I would add some degree of change sometimes. And a modulation can be great, good way to make a track change without changing its foundation, changing the rhythm. So that's one thing you can do, or you can change the rhythm sometimes. Let's move on with this other track by Kang, Who We Are. She's very quiet. Bad version. Okay. So I love the ambience you have with some instruments, like the piano that is very reverberated, or this drive guitar. The drive guitar gives way more character to this track than anything else is doing right now. Because again, that's something you don't hear that much in orchestral music normally. So what we're doing now, like the tracks that are more interesting in this stream for me are these where you hear some cliches of like intros with booms or with pads and stuff, but that have one element that is usually not there. Like the crazy arpeggios from a few tracks before, or these driven guitars, and stuff like that. So good on that. The sound doesn't convince me that much. Maybe it's also because it's not mastered, but also the perks here sound like they belong to another world. You know, if you can think of music as like tracks as in instruments placed in a room, it's like the perks are placed next to me and the rest, like guitars and etc., are placed in another room completely, and that's not how it should sound. It should sound cohesive. So careful about that. You know, with reverb and everything. Also, I'm hearing some piano notes here that are out of tune. I don't know if you guys can hear it. It's gonna be super quiet. The guitar is from RM0? Really? Okay. Did you tell him? Okay, so I like the idea like of this crescendo and stuff, but this sounds very chaotic. Even if I add OTT, it's gonna sound chaotic still. It's because there's just too much happening, and I feel the instruments are not cooperating that much. Like the strings that are playing that melody are on the same exact range as the vocals, which is fine, but you could have actually played those melodies with strings on a lower octave. So to, you know, have that, portray that on two different parts of the spectrum. Also, the perks sound super huge, and the guitars, you know, it's like everything is trying to steal the attention of the listener, and it's not doing it in a good way, in my opinion. And I felt like you had to compensate on the vocals, by adding loads of reverb, and that's just too much reverb in my opinion. You can use delay on the vocals if you want to make them more noticeable. You can EQ them, you can compress them, etc. But adding so much reverb and just adding so much chaos is not a good thing to do. It just adds fuel to the fire in terms of like mixing, and doesn't help you. Also, I don't like this part where everything, you just have percussion and vocals. It would be awesome if you did some, I don't know, low brass melodies, just to accompany everything. It's the same melody you have on everything else, but with low brass to tackle a part of the spectrum which is not being tackled. Make this sound a bit wider. I feel like what you're doing is trying to make this sound epic, but just blasting things at full volume, etc. And that's not what you want to do. Oh wait. Yeah, no, there's just too much happening, and I don't even know if that's in key. I can't dissect what's going on. What I would do, Kang, is just write simple stuff, and that's actually what I do. Still, I write simple stuff. Like my music, when you listen to it, on YouTube, there's always people leaving comments now, like, this is not real music, you suck. Just go listen to the classical music. You're a freaking asshole. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm just gonna make the music I make, but I'm very well aware that my music is simplistic. What I like to do is, and it's simplistic because I'm still learning, by the way. I'm not arrived at my end goal with music, but that doesn't mean you cannot make music. You can make music that is very simple. If you check out my melodies, they're like kids' melodies. Anyone can do those, but I present them in a way that is actually very freaking cool. Like, I have many details that make melodies sound interesting, like counter melodies. There's transition. There's, a melody that is being presented through different articulations of different octaves and stuff. And all of that makes my music sound the way it does. But if you really go and analyze what I'm doing, it's freaking simple stuff. What you're trying to do is maybe you're trying to be impressive. So you're trying to go all out, just give everything you've got, like add this, add that too, just get everything. But that first confuses the listener, and second confuses you too, because you don't know why you're doing what you're doing. You just feel maybe that you need to have as much chaos as possible in your music. But chaos and harmony are two concepts that need to be balanced. You cannot just go full on chaos and expect people to appreciate your music. And that's what you're doing now. Rather than doing that, I would recommend you to write music that is simple in terms of the melodies you're using and everything. Simple in terms of how your instruments are cooperating between each other, but that is written in a way that is very stylish, which is what I like to do. And so far, it worked for me. And in doing that, I'm learning how to become more and more complex in terms of what I'm writing. But that, again, doesn't mean that the simple stuff I write is bad. The people who are like, this sucks because it's not like Mozart. It's like, they have their own taste. I don't fucking care. I have my taste. I like my music, even if it's simple, because there's more degrees of mind-blowing things you can have in music other than complexity. So, yeah, that's my advice. I don't know if I phrased it very correctly, but someone in the chat said, Alex, you're sounding a bit offended right now. You're taking too personally. No, I'm not. It's not for me. Like, the thing that I hate about haters on my YouTube channel is that on my YouTube channel, the only thing I'm trying to do is to promote the message that anyone can make music. You don't need to be a musical elite that has been studying in conservatory for 10 years. That's a message that is fucking poison because it's preventing loads of people from starting out into making music. And my only purpose in this career that I'm trying to build is to show the world that anyone can do it. And on my channel, I try to always be positive and spread inspiration. And it disgusts me to see people come into such a positive space to leave hate and elitism. Get the fuck out of my channel. That just disgusts me. Like, you're trying to come here and ruin the fun for everyone. Why? because you studied in a conservatory and you're not fine with the fact that people can make music despite not studying in a conservatory. Like, that's what I'm fighting against. I don't care about me, like my music. I don't need to have people who praise me on YouTube. My music earns me a living. My music makes me happy to do it. I'm passionate about it. I get, good, fulfillment from it, like monetarily and emotionally, despite the YouTube comments I get and stuff like that. I don't care about that. What I care about is people blocking other people from growing, people judging those who just want to have fun, people just being on a high horse. And then especially when you go check out their channels about these elitist people, their music is non-existent. They don't have the courage to upload it, or if they upload it, it usually sucks. So that kind of makes me feel disgusted that they come to such a positive place to leave hate. And I'm offended, not for me. I don't care about me. I care about you, the people who follow me. The guy who comes on my YouTube channel, checks out one of my songs, and is like, oh, this is awesome. Then reads a comment, and there's elitists like, oh, this sucks. It's not real music. And, a guy like that might be discouraged by seeing a comment like that on my channel. And I don't want my channel to bring discouragement to people. That's why I get so hyped up, so fired up about this stuff. Because I'm just positively disgusted by elitism. But that has nothing to do with me. It has to do with the message I'm trying to spread to the world. So that's it. Let's move on. Okay, so what I'm getting here. First, I don't remember this theme so much to know if you're doing exactly what it's doing. So I don't know if what I'm gonna criticize is you or the original theme. But I feel like the melody here could stand out more. I remember the melody here being more prominent on brass and stuff like that because they use marcatos. Here it sounds a bit distant and it's on sustain, so it doesn't really stand out that much from the perks. Yeah, it sounds quite muffled. I'm not sure what libraries are using. Make sure that you are using mic positions in a way that your melodies are actually clear and close. Because I feel maybe there's too many the stage mic is too loud, or the far mic is too loud. I feel like the melody is far away. Maybe you added too much reverb. The perks are in your face, and they're hiding everything behind them, and that's not good. While this big brass buzzing through, that's very clear. So I don't understand this difference in instruments, and that can really make or break a mix. And I'm quite sure that in the original, there must have been loads more going on. Here you have the perks, the big buzzing brass, maybe you have some string chords underneath that. Then you have the main melody on, what you're playing it on. And and that's all. So it's 5 different elements. I'm quite sure that in the original there were loads of woodwind runs and transitory sounds and counter melodies and stuff like that. So what I would tell you to do is to go back, listen to the Iron Man 3 theme, and try to not only write the main stuff, but also write, and most especially write, all the stuff in the background. And it's gonna take loads of listens to figure out what's going on in the background, actually. So it's not going to be fun, but you can be sure that in doing that, you will learn way more. That's how I learn. When I rewrote the Hans Zimmer track that I did, or the Final Fantasy track, Final Fantasy 15, which I wrote completely as it is by ear. It took a short time to figure out the main stuff. It took a long time to figure out all the crazy piano passages behind and all the woodwind runs and stuff. But those things are the things that really stretched my abilities because they challenged me. So whenever you write music, the best thing to do is to challenge yourself, to go a little bit beyond. So that's what I would recommend here. So let's go with Luke. This one definitely has too much reverb. And definitely, so one issue, too much reverb. Definitely too much reverb. And when you have too much reverb, it might make it sound more spacious, but it also make it sound more blurred and less defined. Too much reverb is like when a track has a great degree of reverb and bite and everything. It's like eating a cake and feeling the crunchiness, or eating a slice of pizza and feeling the crunchiness. So you enjoy it because it's crunchy, and then it also has taste. So it satisfies you on multiple dimensions because of the sound, the texture, and the taste. When you have too much reverb, maybe the track is good. So maybe like the taste is good, but having too much reverb removes the bite, removes the crunchiness. So it's like eating a slice of pizza or a cake, but it's like pudding. And like, what the hell am I eating? Maybe the substance is good, it's great, but the feedback from the lack of crunch, the slimy factor of a pizza that is not crunchy, is not pleasant, and that's kind of like I view tracks with too much reverb. Ideally, make sure to have a good balance between something that sounds close and something that sounds spacious. This is definitely too spacious. Another issue it has is the melodies on the French horn. They sound too long without ever resting. You don't want that. Always leave, like if you try to, when you write melodies for French horn, try to sing them on top of your lungs as if you're breathing those melodies on a French horn. I don't know how it's actually played, but it's a breathing instrument, right? You need to play it with your breath, sorry. So try to sing those, and if you feel like your melody is too long for you to sing it, maybe it will be too long for a French horn player as well. So keep that in mind. And a third thing I don't like is you have some overlaps here. This. I'm isolating them, but just to show you how they sound. But even when I'm not isolating them, I'm hearing them. They are in the track. You can see them in the frequency spectrum. When you see stuff like this overlap, this is not correct. This is weird. Like, this super spiky compared to everything else. You want to go find what instrument is causing this and go on the EQ and remove it, very carefully. So it's there. Okay, you just do a band that takes it away, and you do stuff like that. Now it's kind of gone. Filter Pro Q3, which is this thing, has a function where it allows you to take away overlaps very easily. But just use, if you don't have Filter Pro Q3, you can use Span, which is this one. Inspect your track, see what's happening, where it's happening, open an EQ, and remove it, the overlap. Yeah, those were the main problems, and those are the things you might want to address. It's also a short track, so you might find some tutorials on my channel about how to, tackle orchestral structure. Another tutorial you might want to watch is how to achieve a full sound with an orchestra. I don't even remember what it's called anymore. I made like 150 tutorials or something. But if you look for Alex Moukala full sound tutorial on YouTube, you might find something. Or how to mix and master. I have a tutorial on EQ which talks about this a lot. Let's go with Hans Magnus, Gargantuan, which is not mastered. Looking with Alex. So while I love the melodies and love the harmonies a lot, the sense of, the emotion it gives off It's pretty nice. I love that. I feel like if I let a friend or whoever listen to this track, after like, I don't know, 10 seconds, I'll be like, oh wait, the cool part is coming. And then 20 seconds, the cool part is coming. 30 seconds, my friend has left the house. You know, I feel, I'm not saying this track is bad. I'm saying, can you think of stuff to add on top of this that would interest a listener into keeping on listening? Because this feels like you're doing this intro, which is this long, because you have to do it, because that's how it's done, and that's just how it's done. So you have to do it that long. But nowadays, people's attention span is going very low, so intros are becoming a problem. And for me especially, I struggle with this. So my advice for you here is to think of stuff you can add. Maybe can you add some, I don't know, arpeggios on piano? I don't know, something like that. Or can you add some perks that get bigger and bigger? And some perks that get rhythms that become more intense. Something like that, because here you just have one boom, one boom, one boom, one boom. You know, what if you had and that's that, and then it becomes or what if you add maybe some, after a while you add maybe some bass arpeggio, so you have this, something like that, you know, just in the second part of this, you know, these bars here or whatever. Add some elements that gradually make us feel like the track is evolving. And that is a very like the listener who will listen to that will not even notice, oh, cool. Like if my friend is listening to this track with me, he's not going to say, oh, cool, now he added like those, you know, those bass arpeggios, I'm going to stay in this room. Or, oh, the percussion is getting slightly more intense, so yeah, I'm definitely going to keep on listening. It's not like he doesn't know why he likes to listen to this track, which kind of sounds the same. But his subconscious mind is going to be fed slightly more and more information as the track goes forward. So he's not going to get so bored. A good example of this is Time by Hans Zimmer. Like, the cool thing about Time is that it's a very simplistic track in terms of like what's going on, like the main ideas and stuff. But if you really notice it, if you really listen to it and pay attention, you're going to notice Hans Zimmer keeps on adding little elements bit by bit. On every repetition, there's something new that kicks in. Maybe there's a pad, maybe there's some guitars, clean guitars, maybe there's some perks, maybe there's some low brass. There's always something new coming up. And that's what I recommend you to do here. That's just for the intro. Now let's check out the rest of the track. What can you add here to make it sound more interesting? In my opinion, a counter melody. So, something like that, you know, just, and you don't even need to start from here. You know, you can do the that piano thing, and then after it repeats again, you add a counter melody on solo cello or something. Why? Because you want to keep the listener into listening to the track. You know, I don't like that, you know, this is the only melody you're using. Use a counter melody. That's going to make it sound more interesting without stealing the show from your main melody. This is the part where I go to my friend who just left the house. You're stupid because you just lost on, you know, you're losing one of the coolest, you know, tracks. You know, like when this part kicks in, everyone's gonna go like, "Whoa, this is awesome! This is wow!" That's how I went. This part, you're like, "Oh my god!" Like you know, like the universe is opening to you. That feels freaking amazing. But it took us 2 minutes of slight boredom to get to this part. You don't want that. You don't want people clicking away from your track because the intro and the build-up were boring. You're giving your climax a disservice if you do that, so don't do that. Make sure to like add detail everywhere here. Another thing in this climax for this first part, and sorry guys for interrupting, this thing come to my mind as I listen. So if I don't interrupt, I'm gonna lose track of what I wanted to say. But one other thing I'm noticing is like the melody, like, ba, 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 that thing there on piano. Here you're using it on piano still. Piano, in my mind, doesn't translate so well in climaxes. It gets lost and it kind of decreases the amount of space of a track. It sounds a bit narrows down the track. So what I would have done is do that ba, 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 melody maybe on some strings, maybe even on some vocals. Maybe you do that later on with the choir, I don't know. But doing that, ba, 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 that works. But do that on strings or choir. Because I can barely hear the piano. I know it's there because I'm using my headphones and my hearing is a bit developed now that I've been making music for a while. But not everyone will catch on that, So if you have something more prominent, like some strings, some choir, you can even have some synthesizers. You can have some brass doing that. Just move that melody to something bigger, and it's gonna sound way better. And I'm not, someone said use a kazoo. Maybe you can try a kazoo. I'm not a fan of this choir that is like going on forever. For the same thing I mentioned before with the French horn. Try to sing this part at the top of your lungs for as long as you made it. You're not going to be able. So you need to have some breaks there. Also, having such big, loud ensemble, like chords and stuff, on top of below some big percussion it's not gonna work well. Their percussion and the choir and the chords are gonna fight each other for space. What would have worked much better is having some staccatos. Same chords that you're playing here, but like something like that. Something like that. Marcatos, staccatos. You hear that all the time in my tracks or in people's tracks in climaxes. Use short articulations. You can keep the same notes and chords that you're doing, but just write them for short articulations. It's gonna work much better than this. You can also do long notes like that. There's no problem with doing long notes, but in the climax, I would use them more for the background, the atmosphere, which needs to be quiet. So I would reduce their volume, maybe add some reverb, and also make them a bit more humanly sounding. Probably, because just like that is too much. But yeah, consider adding some staccatos and stuff like that. And most especially consider adding details here. I'm not talking about add something mind-blowing. Just add details, arpeggios here and there, slightly different percussion rhythms, counter melodies. That should be easy. But if you're lost, check out Hans Zimmer. I like where this is going, harmonically speaking. Reminds me of Woodkid. But there's no low end. Also, wait, this is not cool. Where are you leading with this? I think this sounds like a mistake, but maybe you were trying to do something. This is leading to nowhere, so don't do this, Maybe if you did that here, where it ends with the boom, so you're like, that would have been better, but doing this leading to nowhere is like, why? Don't do it. Okay, no. Loudness will not save you. The harmonies are cool. I'm quite sure the orchestration itself underneath those percussion is interesting, but you destroyed it. You just, if this was pizza or this was pasta, you did a very interesting recipe, but then you added like 500 grams of salt on it, and now it's not edible anymore. Like, this is not hearable anymore because of all those perks that sound huge and unbalanced compared to the orchestra. You don't want to do that. I feel where you're going through, like where you're going to. This felt sort of like huge, adventurous. Kind of reminds me of, like, I don't know, ethnic sounds like Egypt or whatever. Desert. I see a desert with this one. A guy running through the desert. It sounds wide. It sounds interesting, fresh. But then those perks ruin everything. You can reduce their volume. You can add a slight more reverb to them to make them sound more coherent with the orchestra in terms of like how they sound, in terms of what space they're being played in. But yeah, be careful with that, because that can really ruin a track very quickly. And then it did that. So don't do it. Don't do it. Dynamics are important. Alonso. This will be the last one, guys. Oh wait, I can normalize this. Sorry, it's gonna make it louder. Okay. Alonso is playing with us. Alonso is a member of my Discord server, by the way. You guys are free to join there if you want feedback from composers and stuff like that. What I like about this track so far, it sounds very much alive in terms of the articulations being used and, you know, the passages and stuff. So good on you, Alonso. This could work very well for film scoring. Maybe not for listening that much, but for film scoring, it's amazing. Probably the cymbal rolls are too crazy. Like, it gets very sharp, so maybe you want to like reduce them a little bit in terms of EQ and stuff. But interesting passages all throughout. Wow. What the You just had to do that, didn't you? You know? He just had to do that. That final chord, just because he can. That's how this track feels to me. It's like just because I can, I'm gonna do awesome shit. And you did. Good job, Alonso. What I would focus on for you next to grow is to focus on layering, because I feel like this track, although it sounds very interesting, very much alive, it also sounds a bit, for me, slim. Like, some melodies could be replicated on multiple instruments at the same time. You could have more stuff in your low end, like bass trombones taking over in some parts. Not taking over, but adding loads of body to the track in some parts. You could have them double basses and cellos doing, you know, being the backbone of some chord passages and stuff like that. And an example of that is, I have a tutorial called Orchestrating Bass, or Use These Instruments to Make Your Track Sound Huge, where I talk about how to use bass trombone, double basses, cellos and stuff to actually beefen up your track. And I'm not sure if I have a tutorial on orchestral layering yet, but try to, when you write orchestral music, to try to, write your ideas in a way that is more spread throughout the octaves, just to beefen everything up. You can even just keep this, not add any new melodies, don't add anything new, but just replicate on different octaves, on different instruments to fatten the orchestra up. Is gonna help it to making the track sound more mind-blowing. I think that's the next step you need to take. If you're lost in that regard, maybe you might want to rewrite some. I say this all the time, but guys, that's what helped me the most. I want to rewrite some tracks from accomplished composers. And in terms of layering, a good composer is, anyone. Layering is something that is very necessary for music. This also works as it is, though. Like, I've heard some film scores, some game scores that have this sort of sonic aspect to it of not being too layered and having space in between instruments and stuff like that. So that also works. But in my mind, if I wanted to personally make this even more mind-blowing, I would layer the shit out of it and it would become crazy. So, yeah.